Welcome to an all-new episode of the Work Shoot Wrestling Podcast. This is Corey Richmond, joined by Jason Brooks. Jason, hope you're having a really good day, but unfortunately, it's become a regular occurrence that almost like now once a month, we're talking about, releases from WWE. I mean, we had, a really good AEW Double or Nothing. In Your House is starting to develop as a card, and we've got, New Japan coming back with Dominion, but the big thing is these releases. Every month, like clockwork, we're getting them,
Well, it's not every month like clockwork. It's happened twice.
Well, the NXT ones followed, but those were basically a couple of weeks ago. Then we had the one right before that, and now we have this one. So, we've had 3 sets of releases in a very short amount, in like 45 days.
There's a lot of releases and big names. So it's been, I don't know what the WWE is doing, but we're gonna talk about that today and try to theorize what they're doing.
And a lot of times I'm not sure if they know what they're doing. But just to put in context, yesterday, early in the morning, Fightful.com first broke the story that Braun Strowman, Aleister Black, Lana, Ruby Riott, Murphy, and Santana Garrett had all been released. And then WWE actually about 25 minutes later confirmed it on their own website. So this isn't one of those things where people are just doing crazy rumors. People are losing their jobs, and it's never a good thing. Before we start, this discussion, so I throw out that I personally never wish anyone to lose a job. Are there people out there who aren't good workers, like a Nia Jax? Sure, but when I see online people celebrating, someone like Braun Strowman, who over the last year or so has, a lot of people say digressed, or Lana isn't a very good worker, or like, yay, they're gone. It's not the time or the place to do it. And that's not what this show is going to do. But Jay, let's get your initial thoughts, unless that's what you wanted to do. Let's get your initial thoughts on some of these releases, I guess, which one is, I guess, what stands out the most?
Yeah, Braun Strowman, he just wrestled for the freaking world title. I said it, I think I said on a show a few months ago about Strowman getting released and how, but I basically said that knowing that there was no way he was going to get released until he did. So, do I feel a little bad? Sure. But he's made plenty of money. I'm not overly concerned about that. But it sucks when someone loses their job, absolutely.
We've all been there.
And Strowman is a guy who, big guy, Vince type guy, pretty bad in the ring, not bad on the mic. He's had some good matches over the years. And we thought, that's a guy, that's a Vince guy. That's a guy that he likes, that he'll never release. And so if he's going to release Braun Strowman, other than like Roman Reigns, pretty much, Corey, to me, what this means, what this signifies is all these releases have been mostly bottom of the roster, mid-carders. Sometimes a surprise like Rusev or whatever. Sometimes it's a surprise. But it's never been an upper. Braun Strowman was the champion for like 5 months last year.
Yeah, he won. He beat Bill Goldberg at WrestleMania a year.
Yeah, it was a big deal. And so to go from being the world champion for 5 months to beating Goldberg at WrestleMania to, I don't want to say carrying SmackDown because it wasn't very good when he was a champion, but to being released a year later, it seems unfathomable. And I think that's the thing that stands out to me, is not that they're releasing people now. It's they don't give a shit. Like, they're releasing anybody. And, we can speculate, and we will, about like why we think that is. But man, I think that's one that really, really, has to, if you're a member of, if you're in the WWE roster or NXT, that has to shake you up. That has to shake you to your core. If a Vince guy can be released, anybody can. And so, yeah, we can go through some of the other names too, but yeah, that's the one that's really, really significant to me, for reasons other than just that he was the world champion.
So let's go a little deeper into what was his name, the Monster of Men, or the guy who says stupid things on Twitter when other people get fired. Now he's actually happened to him. He went, and when there was the first round, I don't know if it was this one or the year before, he went on Twitter and basically said, if you're good enough, they're not releasing you. And now these words, kind of coming back to haunt him. And so I think one of the options could be off the table. We'll talk about this about each guy, but I don't know how AEW would bring him in. I mean, he was made, he had this verbal stuff with Evil Uno and other people on that roster. And of course, business is business. If you can do something, that's the only thing that matters at the end of the day. But, I think one of the problems is the guy was 6'6", 6'7", whatever it was. And where you have a smaller, group of guys now, the average height of guy is like 6'2" on the high end. And then you bring in a guy like, Almost, who's 7'3". You got these guys from India who are bigger. And the guy doesn't look like a monster anymore. So, it kind of was like.
That's not, no. You're on the wrong train here, buddy.
Well, make some money.
Almost is 7'3", that's fine. Braun Strowman is a big dude. He is a gigantic man. And so I think you're barking up the wrong tree. He's a big guy. He's still a big guy. He's way bigger than 99% of the roster. The guys from India, we don't even know if they can wrestle yet. They haven't done anything with them. So that to me, that's not the thing. As far as the AEW stuff, I don't know. I don't think he's a difference maker. That's my opinion. I think he's fine on the mic. People seem to like him backstage. I know he had issues with some of the Evil Uno and some, making stupid things of, talking about indie wrestlers. He's definitely one of these, American type, Mr. America type. So, I think there's some issues there. There's gonna be some issues there, but he is a name. He's a big, big name. And so he'll land somewhere for sure, and he'll have a big impact. These people can only go, so many of them can only go somewhere, right? And so it'll be interesting to see where he goes. I really don't think he should go to AEW. I think it'd be a bad move for AEW to bring him in. But Tony Khan might say, listen, this guy's not great, but he gives us something different than we have. Who are all our top guys? Moxley, 235, 210. Omega, same size. The Bucks are smaller. Cody's small. And so other than, Miro, you've got Lance Archer, they mostly have smaller guys. So he may be able to change things. But let's talk about why he was released. So he signed this big contract. Was it last year? 2019?
Yeah.
So 2 years ago, he signed this big contract where he made over $1 million. That's what the internet is saying, right? And it seemed like it was a big money deal. And definitely at the time where AEW was starting up, a lot of guys were signing contracts in case AEW might scoop them up. One, this signifies, Corey, that they don't give a shit about AEW at signing guys. They could care less now because they sign people and they release them. Also tells you these contracts that they sign is made out of toilet paper. The contracts are just completely pointless. If they're able to release these people after getting these big contracts. To me, and again, we've talked about this time and time again. They just signed a contract with Peacock for billions of dollars. Now, I haven't looked at their stock lately, but to me, it doesn't make sense that they just signed this. Maybe they just think Strowman isn't valuable. For what he makes, he's not worth it. But what would lead them to have then signed him to this contract in the first? He's not changed. He's the same guy. Am I wrong? What's different about him now than there was then? To give him that contract, to make it seem like he's the guy. I think that's the interesting thing is what happened from 2019 to now. They gave him the title. He's still not good in the ring. He's never been good in the ring. WWE oftentimes doesn't care about that. I don't know. I think it's fascinating. I think him being released is one of the most fascinating releases that they've had in maybe the modern era.
It's interesting. I guess I think this all has to do with the bottom line when it comes, and I'm not blaming Nick Khan for all this, but since Nick Khan has come in, they've cut a lot of salary. I mean, they did get the Peacock deal. They've done a lot of things, and they're going back on touring now. But you know, I don't know if it was Brian Alvarez or Jason Powell, but one of the people who we've had on the show before, one of the great writers, had said something to the effect that in 2 years ago, you were signing these guys these big deals for working, 4 to 5 times a week. And now with the pandemic and now possibly the house show industry totally changing, you're signing these guys to work once a week. And, there's got to be some equalization on there. And then also the other idea.
But Corey, hold on. I'm going to stop you there. The house shows didn't make money for WWE. They've talked about this forever. The house shows did not make money for them. The house shows were essentially there to promote their product so that when they were on TV, more people would watch them on TV. It was not a money-making thing. So, like, I don't agree with that. Now, they don't have the gates with Raw and SmackDown, and they lost a lot of money there. But they're about to go back on tour. So why would you cut salary when you're about to make money? So I think that point to me doesn't make sense either.
Well, I mean, it's also, if you look at it, a lot of these guys who have gotten cut got these big salaries in 2019 when AEW was first starting out, and they wanted to sign all those people to stay away from. I mean, you had Gallows and Anderson had said, they got 7-figure deals. I think they said like $750 a piece per year. The FTR who decided to leave, they were offered, like $800,000. Rhino has said that he was offered like double he was making, and he still wasn't being used. And him leaving Impact because he actually wanted to work. But I mean, they were giving out all these huge deals when at a different time period. And now it looks like when you have like a money guy who more financially responsible, and Nick Khan running everything. Of course, Vince is still the final word on everything. But it seems like either there's, and we'll talk about this in a little while, either a sale is happening at some point. They're trying to make their books look good. But it looks like, the chickens are coming home to roost, where they gave all these big money deals. Ratings aren't as good as they used to. Yes, they're going back to Saudi Arabia, and most likely by the end of the year, and they get like $50 million per show. And they're supposed to go like 2 times a year. But the idea is, like I said, these guys got huge contracts when they were in a war, and now the war is theoretically sort of over.
Wait. Hold on.
Sure.
That theory is blown. Those guys were all released already. Like there isn't no AEW's more successful now than it was a year and a half ago. They just signed a big TV contract. The war isn't over.
NXT already lost it, but right.
I don't like saying there's a war or whatever. That's kind of stupid anyway. They're not on the same night. They're not whatever. But that's not over. If anything, they should be more scared of AEW because of how well they're doing with their pay-per-view buys, with their ratings. I know it's been a little weird with this Friday night thing. But so to me, I would be more worried about them. And what that shows you is, one, you're right. I very good point about Nick Khan. He might be a part of this. Vince is still the guy, though. Vince is still the guy who's like, this guy should be released. But maybe Nick Khan's presence, to your point, is really being felt here. Maybe that's what's going on. But it seems strange, though, right? He's the business guy. But to my knowledge, he's not the wrestling guy. Mm-hmm. He's evaluating if these guys are worth it or not. I think it's fascinating as to why. And the budget cuts thing just doesn't seem to make sense to me. You cut budget when you're losing money,
right? Or
when you're close to losing money, not when you're making money hand over fist.
Yeah. Oh, and our social media guru who runs our Instagram @WorkShootPod, and also check us on Twitter @WorkShootPod. Jackie Endy said the stock price is at $56 right now, which you asked a few minutes ago. So they're not doing badly by any stretch.
No.
And these type of things, when you reduce salary, it helps the stock. I mean, so
yeah, but that's not necessarily true either. So they cut. Okay, the money doesn't make sense. They cut Braun Strowman. Santana Garrett makes, what does she make? She doesn't make anything, right? Okay. Lana, we know, makes a big deal. We can talk about Lana in a minute. Ruby Riott doesn't make anything, and Murphy doesn't make anything, and Aleister Black doesn't.
I mean, I'm actually got a pretty good deal when he came over.
I'm sure they make fine money for but I'm saying they're not making top echelon money, right? So they're doing pretty well. What does laying these few people off do? when they're signing people to NXT. They're still signing people to these deals. They're trying to work on something with New Japan, supposedly.
Yeah,
but then at the same time, they're cutting people. Something just doesn't make sense to me.
Right. Well, also, and with that, and we'll get to Aleister Black and Lana in a second here, but one of the things that Fightful.com reported earlier today was that supposedly there's a bunch of like bigwigs of decision makers for people going up to the main roster are at the PC today to go and look at people. So, and it's a lot better on the bottom line when you have somebody on the main roster making 60,000 in NXT, and that's maybe high end, compared to somebody making mid six figures on the main roster, especially when I think you get your salary goes up when you go to the main roster. So I mean, as long as you have like guys like Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, Charlotte, and maybe a Becky coming back, I guess they think that they're going to be fine.
Then don't pay any of these people. What's the point then? Yeah. It's like what are we doing here? Ruby Riott getting released is ridiculous. Absolutely, she's one of the best female wrestlers on the roster. It is ridiculous. Murphy getting released is ridiculous. Santana Garrett, they didn't use her. Whatever. Lana, I think she's horrible. Whatever. Aleister Black, him getting released. Why are they releasing him? They just did packages with him and they were going to promote him. He had a match this week against Big E. They're releasing someone who had a match that they were promoting against a guy who they think is going to be a big time guy. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. To your point about moving people to, from NXT to the main roster or whatever, when they move them to the main roster, they give them more money. So it's not like they're going to stay down there making $80,000 a year. They're going to come up and they're going to get paid well. How much was Santana Garrett making?
Well, the better part of it, she was supposedly from multiple sites saying the reason why she might have gotten cut was because she was supposed to be called up. Same thing with Chelsea Green and Vanessa Bourne, that they, even though they never got to TV, they were supposed to have been called. Like Vanessa Bourne was supposed to be called up like a year ago.
Boy, that doesn't make any sense to me. Send her back
making more money. Well, I guess her name was on a list on the main roster, and sometimes like, all right, we're getting rid of 6 people. These are the 6. And like from things that I read was like Aleister Black and Ruby Riott were not on like the initial cut list from the night before. Like I said, Sean Rosapo does a great job with this stuff. Had gotten the list the day before and wasn't gonna put it out like I said, a third source, but on that initial list, Strowman, Lana, Murphy, and I guess Santana Garrett are on that list, but the other 2 weren't. So what makes me think was, Nick Khan said we got to get rid of this much money, and that's it. And it turned out this, it's an equal on a spreadsheet.
Okay, I think maybe that's it, right? Maybe it's we got to get rid of this much salary for our bottom line to make it look better, and this is what we're doing. Obviously, the ratings have not been good for Raw because of, the NBA playoffs and things like that. And so I don't know. I think it's really, really interesting. But where does it, and we've heard now there could be more releases. There's some names that are floating around. I don't like getting into people losing their jobs, but they're saying, I mean, a lot of stuff is out there about more releases coming. And so, I mean, Raw's 3 hours. They need people on these shows. So, I mean, how many women do they have on these rosters? So they've released, I think you said, in the Wrestle Life group, 11 women have been released.
In the last 5 days, yeah.
I mean, and it's very few NXT women. So it's like, please just leave NXT where it is. Don't mess with any of them. But I don't know. I think
there are 7 women currently on the active SmackDown roster, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It looks like 10 on the Raw roster.
There's 10, and there's a tag team champions, and there's only 17 women on the active roster.
Yeah,
there's almost more women. There's almost more women in NXT. I mean, we don't have to count that. That's not good. That's not good podcasting. But it's probably pretty close to the women who are on the NXT roster that we see on a semi-regular basis compared to the 17.
And it's funny though, and that was counting, because I was just counting it up. That's counting Eva Marie, who's mostly not going to be a wrestler, and Sonya Deville, who aren't wrestlers. So it's really like 16.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It's this real women's evolution. Here we go. You know, so and you know, Corey, we could say the other thing we could say is maybe they're doing this so they could bring in, I don't know if Ronda Rousey, if she's got a contract, I don't know what her deal is. You bring in a Ronda Rousey, you bring in a Brock Lesnar, and that's how you even the books out. And maybe that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to bring in a couple of big time people, and that's how they're going to even things out. But I mean, if you're in NXT, you're gonna go to Raw or SmackDown. You might be released. You might get shitty storylines. It's like, you know, you save your money, everybody. You know,
WWE world and in the real world, yeah.
Save your money. All right, so let's get to these specifics.
Okay.
Aleister Black is, I don't understand it. I don't understand what they've done with them. He was on Twitch or whatever. He basically put the WWE over. He put Vince over. You know, he said people blame, you know, Vince for all this stuff. He said him and Vince had a good relationship. There was an idea of him being, you know, going back to NXT, and that didn't happen because they thought they had something else for him. So he didn't bury anyone. He actually buried more the wrestling media than anything. So he kept himself in good graces for the idea. Maybe he'll come back at some point. That was also a very, very strange release because they've been hyping him up. They've been putting him over. And Aleister Black said, my merchandise sells well. Like, the fans are into me. So that doesn't make, and he's a different kind of character than they have in the WWE. So why release him?
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like you said, he just did a run-in a week and a half, 2 weeks ago on TV, and looked like they were starting a Big E feud coming up. I mean, I don't know if I believe when he was in the Twitch chat saying that they were going to give him the U.S. title, but they were waiting for fans to come back. I do think if they wanted to put a title on somebody, they would have put a title on somebody, but that's semantics. And I was thinking, you know what? We spoke about offline, the idea of, you know, there was these rumors that Thea Trinidad, Selena Vega was possibly coming back. She did something at the PC. With him not, you know, basically burying the company, maybe she's still coming back. And, you know, he wanted to make sure that it didn't affect her. But I mean, you know, that's just another person who's been gone as of, you know, the last couple of months. I think Aleister Black is one of the most interesting people on this list of people who've been, you know, released. He could pretty much go anywhere, and I think that he may not be the one that you build your company around, but he's a guy that you could put in main events and everywhere else, and you're not going to lose money in the investment. I mean, I could see him going to, you know, just doing the thing on the indies for a while, then maybe when things open up, going to New Japan. I mean, he could be a headliner in Ring of Honor right now. He could be a headliner in Impact. He could be a headliner in MLW. He could be anywhere he wants to go. He could get a legit. And the reason I didn't say AEW at the top, because they have so many people, and you almost don't want everyone to go there because they could get lost. Even though they're bringing in the Rampage show, I would almost like to see him go to either like a New Japan ROH Impact thing with their deal, and, you know, go to Japan, feud with Okada and Will Ospreay and, you know, all those people.
I mean, Tony Khan did say in the conference call that they are expanding their roster because of Rampage. So, you know, if you think about the idea that they have a lot of young people, dark and, you know, in elevation, maybe this is the time to get a Aleister Black, who I think fans look at as possibly a top guy. And I think he's a guy that WWE totally dropped the ball with and could do some really cool stuff. And look at Darby Allin. Look at what he's done. The creative license they've given him, and he's taken a ball and ran with it. And Aleister Black could do the same thing. And he's bigger. And in my opinion, I love Darby Allin, but Aleister Black's better in the ring. So to me, you could put him on Rampage and he could be a big deal.
Sure.
So, to me, it's just it's insane that they released him, and I think that there's a very, very good chance he becomes a bigger star as a result of getting released than anything.
Let me ask you, before we get to the other people on this list, and this quick thing here,
Sure.
how much does the value of maybe like a guy like Samoa Joe, he's most likely going to be signed if he could pass, medical. But with having releases so close together, do you think some of these people could get lost in the shuffle where like an Impact or an ROH is like, I'm saving my money to sign Aleister Black, so I won't go after this person, because most people are, yes, ROH does have Sinclair money, but it really seems like Sinclair is a write-off for them, for Sinclair ROHs. But if an Impact or an MLW, one of these companies had an idea of maybe I want to sign this guy, but now you have all these extra people coming in. Do you think it maybe hurts the market a little for these guys who got released first?
Yeah, absolutely. That's economics, right? You flood the market, it lowers the value of the asset. You flood the market with a bunch of assets, the value of the assets lowered. So yeah, I think so. But I think this is where the diamonds are still gonna, the potential stars are still gonna stand out. So I think someone like Aleister Black is still gonna stand out. I think Ruby Riott, although she's not a quote unquote star, I think is so good in the ring and on the mic. I think she's so underrated. And has such a good reputation in the business. I think she's going to land somewhere. Lana, her association with Rusev, she's not a diamond at all, but, whatever. Santana Garrett, I don't know. But, and Murphy, I don't know either. But I think that some of these people who we think could stand out, are going to stand out. And so, yeah, so I think the people who we think could get good deals are probably going to get good deals.
Well, I guess I'm like you Ruby Riott now joins, and yes, she's going to be a little bit longer to wait. Her deal, 39 days is until August 31st, which is 1 week before All Out. So would not be surprised if she's the wild card, the Joker in that battle royal. But it's just my hearsay. But you have her. You got Chelsea Green. You got Mickie James. You got both members of the Iconics. So it's not like there's just her on the market now. So I'm just wondering.
Yeah, well, Mickie James, AEW should absolutely bring Mickie James in to be a kind of coach mentor. They need a woman like that on the roster. I know they kind of have Serena Deeb, but technically she's like the NWA champion or whatever. I think Mickie James would be perfect. I think some of these women are going to get lost. I think Billie Kay could get lost. I think it could be hard for her. I think Chelsea Green and Peyton Royce will be fine. And the other thing that some of these women are doing, I know Chelsea Green's like talking about doing a podcast with Barstool and Playboy and I don't know, some other stuff. But, people are trying to figure their thing out. They're trying to branch out. And I think that's the cool thing about this too. They're trying to branch out and make money in other ways and use the fame that they've gotten from the WWE to figure stuff out. But yeah, I think some of these women absolutely could. And also, Corey, we have to throw into the fact that some of these women could be re-signed, or men could be re-signed at like a lower deal.
Yeah, I think that's
it's not like they're gone for. It's not like they're gone forever. Drew McIntyre can't. How many people have come back? So I think there's a chance that some of these people could come back at some point. So that'll be kind of interesting as well. Also, we got to throw into the fact that things are opening up. I don't know where these wrestlers are with being anti-vaxxers or whatever, but a lot of people are getting vaccinated. We're lucky enough to be in a country, and I got a lot of problems with the U.S., but we've done a really good job of vaccinations compared to a lot of other countries. So a lot of people are vaccinated, and so these guys can maybe go to Japan and wrestle over there. And I think look at New Japan Strong with that, how great that's been. So I think there's a lot of opportunities, and we haven't even talked about MLW. And if they're bringing in David Richards, God bless David Richards. What's he, 40? They could bring in someone like, Aleister Black or a freaking Buddy Murphy. Forget it, Buddy Murphy's spectacular. So I think basically what I'm saying is I think there's still a lot of opportunities out there for a lot of these wrestlers, but I think some people like Santana Garrett, it might be kind of harder for her. Because they never gave her a chance on the main roster to stand out, or really NXT.
Yeah, I could see her going back to Impact, where she was there before that, working the indies. I mean, I don't think she's gonna, has no chance of, coming back. But I think that could be an interesting one. So the last person that, and I guess quickly on Lana, I mean, the obvious idea is most likely joining her husband in
Absolutely.
in AEW, and of course she said something to the fact today. It's just a random day. I'm going to finally congratulate my husband on winning the TNT championship. So it's a nice little dig there. But
she's Corey. She's horrible, and in
trying
the ring, she's absolutely terrible. As a baby face, she was terrible.
As a heel, though, as the voice,
she did a nice job as a heel there when she was like the accent and stuff. But since she went away from that, she's been horrible. Now, also, she's been booked horrible too. So that's been a part of this. But I don't want to see her do the joining Rusev, and then I don't know. I think it'll be corny, but that being said, who knows, right? It might be a thing where AEW is like, hey, Miro's a guy. We love him. We want to bring in Lana. So who knows? She'll probably get a spot somewhere because her association with her husband. And the fact that, she's been on this Total Diva. She's got, she has a track record of celebrity. So, I could see her coming in. But, please don't have her wrestle. Just don't have her wrestle. Please.
So the last person is Murphy, who basically got in a relationship with the Mysterios and then left TV and hasn't been seen since. I think he could be the most talented. I mean, we all love Aleister Black, and I think just the total package of Aleister Black might be better. But Murphy in ring, and if he has a mouthpiece, I think he could be a star. I think that he should go to New Japan Pro Wrestling. I think he could.
Oh my God.
I mean, is him and
Omega? No, and I don't know if he'd be a juniors guy or if they'd put him in the heavyweight division, but oh my God, Corey, he would be spectacular. It's like put him on strong for a little bit until he can go to Japan, and then have him go to Japan. Oh my God, him against Ren Narita or Dickerson. Oh my gosh, it'd be great. I think, and Corey, here's the thing: he doesn't need a mouthpiece. He can talk. He's cut promos. Like, he's fine.
He's fine.
And I also think we got to do this thing. We always talk about giving people a mouthpiece. How many people have a mouthpiece? Like, nobody. So I think now's a time where he had a whole storyline with the Mysterios, and he had to talk a lot during that. So, and I thought that he did a pretty good job with the Rollins stuff. I think he did a good job, Corey. Was it like amazing? Was it Adam Cole 2 days ago? No, I mean, that's another level. But do I think he can continue to improve and develop if given a shot? 100%. 100%. One of the things that we read about him is that he's very receptive to creative and things like that. So sometimes, like, you got to give these guys the ball and let them run with it. And I mean, it's funny because him and Aleister Black have had some of the best TV matches on Raw, and they have great chemistry. They are fantastic in the ring together, and Murphy is just phenomenal. Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens with him. He'll go somewhere for sure. I don't know that he'll ever be world champion. Probably, kind of to what you said, he doesn't necessarily have that it factor. I think he's fine on the mic, but I don't know that he has that it factor. And to your point about, needing a mouthpiece. But man, he's fun to watch. He's such a fun wrestler to watch because he kind of combines like a hybrid style with a high flying style with a mat-based style. He's really, really fun to watch. And putting him in the G1,
look at that emotion. Oh, and before we forget, what is the beer of the week this week, Jason?
You barely ask me that anymore. It's Hop Butcher Lord Octopus. It's a very, very good beer, about 7.5%. Mostly mosaic hops, which are very, very good. Solid beer. So very good. Hop Butcher. The brewery actually they're opening up a spot here down the street from me. So in a couple months, so I will be there. We might be doing a podcast from there at some point because I'll be living there pretty much.
We'll let the wife know. So I guess the last thing on this before we move on to a couple of little items to end the show, the rumor has been that maybe there could be a sale from WWE. They've done the Peacock deal. There's been talks in the past of, possibly NBC just totally buying them out at some point, maybe Disney. I mean, and like I said earlier in the show, when you make all these cuts, special, and it's not one of the quarterly, conferences which they do let the stockholders know about, you're making your books better. I couldn't lead to a sale. I mean, people like Brandon Thurston from WrestleNomics, who does a great job with the ratings, and when it comes to just economics of wrestling, has said that he would be surprised if it happens in the short term because there's year one of Nick Khan's plan of doing everything. But what do you think? Do you think the McMahons could be out of the wrestling business at some point? I know it's speculation more than anything else, but do you think that's what's behind all of these releases?
I don't know. To be honest with you, I think it's like they released Braun Strowman, so now they're going to sell the company. I mean, that seems, after the big contract they signed with Peacock, it seems far-fetched. Now, do I think it could be something where they're setting up to eventually sell? Maybe, but also if you're NBC or whatever, you want stars if you can have them.
Sure.
So to me, it doesn't make any sense to release it if they're making $10 million a year or something, maybe. But and I also think maybe, from a standpoint of they looked at these guys from a value asset standpoint and they thought the asset isn't worth what they're paying them. So it's time for them to go. As far as selling the company, I don't know if I see that anytime soon, but at the same time, Vince is, I mean, how old is he? At some point, at some point, what are we doing here? And we've been saying that since we started this podcast years ago, but he's still freaking hanging on. So I don't know. I think it really can go. I don't think anything happens in the short term. I agree. I don't think deals of this magnitude happen quickly anyway. I think deals of this magnitude, take a long time, months and a year or years possibly. But do I think at some point this happens? Yeah. And does it sound like this Nick Khan guy had a plan other than hiring his buddy there, who was horrible, Adnan Virk? He seems like he's a really smart guy who has a plan. And here's the other thing, Corey. They hired Adnan Virk. Adnan Virk said he hadn't met Vince yet. Adnan Virk did the trial period or whatever without meeting Vince.
Right.
What that tells me, one, is that Vince is a little bit maybe not as involved as it used to be. And two, Nick Khan has a lot of influence in what's happening on the show and in general. And so, make of that what you will. I don't think he's booking matches or anything like that. But I do think his influence is really going to start to be seen here. It already has been. And I think it's going to continue to be. How much do we know about this president? Who was the president before? Barrios or whatever? We never even heard of this fucking guy. Nick Khan, we're hearing his name all the time. So I think this Nick Khan guy is really, Tony Khan got a promo about Nick Khan, which is pretty funny. And by the way, for people saying it was a shoot, it was not a shoot. He talked to New Japan about it, whatever. But it was a funny promo. But I do think, we're going to continue to see Nick Khan have a big influence. And maybe, before we talk, how long did we talk about Triple H being the guy who takes over, or Shane or Stephanie? It sounds like Nick Khan's a big, big influence here. And so we will see how this continues to develop. But I think it's interesting. And I also think he doesn't give a shit about any of this. I want to make money. I'm the president. My job is to be profitable, and I don't give a shit what I do. And that's a lot, that's what CEOs generally do, which is why, I have problems with them. But that's what he was hired to do, and we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, so like I said, will this be the last set of releases? Most likely not. I think the most interesting thing, besides people who got released, and Jay, you may tell me, whatever, but I do think it's interesting that these releases did not coincide with right after All Out. Most of these things in the past, releases happen and people wouldn't be able to work, the big shows.
Corey, they don't care. They don't care. I think that's, Corey, they don't care. They released Braun Strowman. They released Rusev's wife. They released Aleister Black. They don't care anymore about AEW and people going. That's the Big Show went there. Mark Henry went there. That's clear. That I think that evidence is out. We don't even need to like mention that. It's clear they don't care about AEW and them acquiring talent. It doesn't matter to them about a big show or whatever. They're going to do what they're going to do to be profitable. And AEW is going to do what AEW is going to do.
Absolutely. All right. So moving on. And like I said, as more things come about with more releases, of course, we'll be one of the people you listen to. You can check out our thoughts more in depth at times on Twitter at WorkShootPod. But Jay, this past weekend, AEW held one of its 4 quarterly pay-per-views, Double or Nothing, but with a full crowd. Before we were not on the air, for last week's AEW Dynamite, where they had a full crowd. But Jay, right off the bat, how much different was it for you? I felt it was for me, but watching these shows, AEW showed with full crowds. It felt like, it added something, at least for me.
Yeah, the Dynamite was whatever because it was kind of a throwaway show. They had a bunch of jobber matches. It reminded me like a WWE Superstars and from us growing up. But the pay-per-view, you felt it. You felt the difference. And Jason Powell talked about this, like reviewing Raw in the fucking Thunderdome after. And I did watch some of Raw, by the way. So doing Raw in the Thunderdome after watching AEW pay-per-view was a rough watch. Yeah, and just the crowd's reaction. And you could tell the wrestlers how excited they were to wrestle in front of people. That was really, really cool. Thinking about it, I feel like it would have been cool for them to do something for Brody Lee. With crowds there, I think that would have been a cool thing. I don't think were any Dark Order members involved at all in the pay-per-view. I don't think they were.
Evil Uno I believe Evil Uno and Colt Cabana were both in the
Casino Battle Royale. Yeah, whatever. I did. So I don't know. I think that would have been cool. But anyway, no, I felt it straight away. I thought it was really, really, really awesome to hear the crowd and to hear how excited they were. And they were pumped to be there. And Daly, it's funny because Daly's place isn't the loudest place either because of its open air. And sometimes it's hard to hear the crowd, but the crowd was ready. They were ready to cheer. They were ready to go nuts. It was a very good show. So it wasn't like, oh, this show sucks or whatever. Every surprise they were in for, Leo Rush and Mark Henry. The Jungle Boy thing after he won and the whole crowd doing his theme song. It was awesome. It was really, really awesome. And it's made such a big difference. It makes such a big difference. Moments. And that's what wrestling's all about. Like those moments. So yeah, it was great. I'm glad the crowds are coming back. You dummies who are listening to this, please get a vaccine. So we can, be full capacity everywhere again soon. It was great. It was fantastic.
Now, I think for anyone who says, the crowd just cheered for everyone because they wanted to be there and everything similar to like WrestleMania, you saw something that was unique. You did see some of the guys who were truly over and who, like an Orange Cassidy and, Britt Baker, but the biggest one, and first time I watched it with Christopher Morenon and Alex Mercado, both in our group. And I didn't realize until I watched the second time. I mean, we all know that the future of this company is Hangman Adam Page, but the reaction that Hangman Adam Page got, he came across as a true star. And you sit there and you go, all right, the TV, we're not sure, ratings are good, this or that, but until you see people in a live audience, and like in the reaction that he got, like I said, and a couple of other people, you're like, all right, some of this stuff is delivering. And that's
Yeah.
what you need to find out as these companies go on the road. I mean, we know, like, we said before with Vince is single-minded, whatever he wants to, he'll do, but he got, 2 days of WrestleMania with crowds and not much of anything got booed. But that's gonna be the real big thing when they go on this 25, city tour for Raw, SmackDown, and whatever pay-per-views. What these after like maybe the first one or two, when fans are just happy to be there, who's really over, who's not?
Well, I think AEW is a little different because Page was already over. Jungle Boy and Jurassic Express were already kind of getting over. So AEW has been funny in that they've kind of, and this is why AEW has been solid, right? They've done kind of this long-term storytelling. Jungle Boy's been ascending for a long time, right? Page has been ascending for a long time. The same guys who we seem like they're ascending have been ascending. Whereas Drew McIntyre was kind of just figuring out how to be a babyface before they gave him this run right before the pandemic. So he didn't have a run. Roman Reigns, and this is the chaotic nature of the WWE storytelling where everything's in flux all the time. So I think with AEW, the reason why they were cheered is because they've been building them up for this length of time. Whereas WWE just kind of does random shit. And so like, we don't know like what's going to happen. As far as the idea that like everybody wanted to cheer, yes, they should. It's been 17, 18 months of not being able to do any of this. So yeah, damn right for people to be outside, be excited, watch live wrestling. If we go to All Out, you and I in Chicago, you damn right I'm going to cheer. I'm going to cheer everyone, except if Lana comes out. Yeah, I'm going to cheer Strowman, but I'm going to cheer everybody. I'm going to be super excited, and we should be, because it's great to watch live. Like, when I went to a Sox game a couple weeks ago, like I was getting emotional going to a live baseball game. So like, yeah, you damn right they should be excited. And I'm glad that they're excited. And I think you felt that emotion, but I also think it's clear that certain people are over more than others. Yeah. I think that's very, very clear. And I think Adam Page and Jungle Boy, who can't talk his way out of a paper bag, is clearly one of those guys. And, it'll be interesting to see, where they go moving forward. So Corey, here's my question for you that I don't know. Okay. With these shows, is it now full capacity at Daly's Place until they go on the road in July?
I mean, I would think, but I haven't heard anything for sure. I mean, I guess they're going to sell as many tickets as they can. I mean, I do wonder if every week or every other week before they go back officially, to Miami and the spots in Texas, if they'll be able to sell out, or if it was because it was the first show and the pay-per-view, and that's why you had the bigger crowd. But I mean, it will be interesting, like this Friday, and I think next Friday again, they're going to be on, their different night. It'll be interesting to see if they get, a full crowd, if available. The
shows aren't live, correct?
This Friday is live. I'm not sure about next Friday at this point. Okay. I believe it'll be next Friday because of the.
And so I think that'll be, how do we continue to see people get over? What do they continue to do? So I think it'll be fun with the crowds. We've seen this, like and Corey, I did watch both of those documentaries on Ultimate Warrior, and you were right. I still feel like neither one of them were perfect. As good. Neither one of them was like Owen Hart documentary, sure. But I feel like they were both okay. But you saw that with the Ultimate Warrior. He got bigger because the fans were into it. Not, you know what I mean? That's what happened. That's why generally guys get over. And, again, I think Adam Page is going to be next AEW World Champion. I think that's pretty clear to me. That's why they didn't have him wrestle in this match. And I think when he wins it, it'll be the right time. And I think when he wins it, the crowd will be like incredibly behind him. And I think he's establishing himself, right behind Omega and Cody and the Bucks and Moxley as like the next guy. And I think the crowd told us that. They told us that.
Yeah, a couple things here on the pay-per-view before we move on to NXT and get ready to close this show out. What was your thoughts on, for the first time in 6 years, staying an actual wrestling match? What was your thoughts on that?
First of all, what is he, 62?
62?
Jesus, he's in incredible shape. Like he is he's in incredible shape. And so God bless him. And someone who like tries to work out and eat okay, and other than, my drinking beer, like I try to take care of myself. It's hard as I get older, as I've gotten older, to stay in shape. So the fact that he looks like that at 62, that's just a credit to him and his work ethic and his discipline, as a person, and probably his genes too. But yeah, he looked good.
From the Warrior documentaries.
Yeah, I mean, he looked good. He looked good. The match itself, the match is fine. The match is fine. I think the wrong team won, but again, feel good story. The guy's in front of a crowd for the first time. Blah 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 blah. But what do you do with Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky? I mean, that's gonna be. I don't know what you do with. I guess you have them continue. So, yeah, I'm not sure exactly where they go there. I think the wrong team won, but it is what it is.
I took a couple of matches the wrong people won, and we discussed in large demand some of those things in past shows. Agogo looked good for what he was, but he should have won. In that. But I guess the last two questions I have for you are: one, what did you think of the three-way? And I guess the other half of that is, after seeing Stampede, Stadium Stampede, should the world title match gone on last, or did they make the right decision?
I think it was one of the best three-way triple threat matches I've ever seen. The match was really, 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 really good. And triple threat matches are very hard to do. It was one of the best triple threat matches. It was, to me, on the level of the Rollins, Cena, Brock triple threat at Royal Rumble years ago. It was a great, 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 great match. Should have gone on last. And at the Stadium Stampede was fine. It was fun. I'd love to see Conan, and it was a fun match, but it was like fine. I'm fine that Stadium Stampede was last. Like, it wasn't a big deal. And it was a good way to end the show. And, they came back to the ring, and I think that part was important. And the fact they ended it with, Sammy Guevara getting a win, that 6:30 was ridiculous. Like the level of athlete we have wrestling now, it's crazy. But yeah, I think it was fine that they ended it like that, but the triple threat match was spectacular. One of the only matches I didn't like was the Cody match. It did nothing for me. But yeah, triple threat
because of everything leading up to it with the promo.
Yeah, it was that, and Anthony Gogo, he's so green. It's like, and Cody's not Ric Flair. Like, he needs to be in there with someone good to have a good match. But that's kind of neither here nor there. The show was a very good show overall.
I'd agree, and we'll see what they do as a follow-up this Friday. Once again, wasn't on this Wednesday. We'll be on this Friday, of course, because of the NBA at 10 o'clock. We'll see how they do week 2 of that. So NXT in your house, taking place in 2 weeks, I believe. I believe it's June 13th on a Sunday. We started to get the initial build, and we had the return of Adam Cole, Bebe. And we saw why he's on one level. A lot of other guys in the industry, especially at NXT, are on a whole nother level. So, Jay, I'm going to let you take the floor here so you can gush about your boy, who you, of course, discovered and are the founding father of the Bebe fan club.
He's just so good on the mic. He's so convincing of who he is and what he believes. And I don't know if he's taking acting classes. Like, I'm not sure. He's been this way since Ring of Honor 10 years ago. He's not changed. He's always been this good on the mic. When he would do Ring of Honor, Adam Cole would, story time with Adam Cole, baby, and he'd cut a promo for 5 to 10 minutes. He is a top 10 on the. In AEW there would be
maybe 3 people.
Moxley?
Eddie, and maybe Cody?
No. I think Cole would be over Eddie and over Cody. I think maybe Moxley, and then the other two. Cody gets a little bit funny in some of his promos. Cody sometimes in his promos isn't believable, but that could be because he's a baby face. Like, I don't know. But
sorry, I meant MJF. That was the other guy I was thinking
of. Yeah, I think Cole's better than MJF.
Really?
Okay. Yeah. Because MJF feels sometimes like he's playing a character, whereas Adam Cole feels like he is the character. And I mean, again, we're
picking this.
It's all very close. It's like we're not comparing him to Strowman or whatever. I know I'm beating on Strowman because he's on my mind. So sorry. I know Strowman got released today or yesterday. He's just so good on the mic. He's so good on the mic, and you know what? He's in NXT. I know they're paying him a good salary because they he could have gone to other places, and I just hope he's making a lot of money and doesn't ever come to the main roster. And I also think they realize like how important he is to the show. When he comes on and talks, it's different than other people who talk on that show. Him and Santos Escobar, when they talk, it's different. And you saw it with Karrion Kross. Like Karrion Kross was trying to remember his lines. Adam Cole was just himself. And I would compare Adam Cole to like CM Punk.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, he's not. I think Adam Cole could easily be there. I think with the material he's been given, I don't see why he couldn't be there.
Wow. Okay.
I thought his promo was so spectacular, and thinking about what they've done with him over the years and NXT giving him that vehicle. I just think he's just spectacular. And in the ring, I think he's really, really good. But on the mic, I think there are very, very few who are on his level. I mean, I think he's top 5, top 10 in the industry, and I don't think it's even close.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I mean, you put him over certain guys might be better in ring than him because of the talking factor, and some guys because of the talking factor aren't as good as in ring. He is one of those guys who is a total. Hate saying this, but he's a total package when it comes to.
Isn't that what Lex Luger used to do? He do that, yeah. The torture rack, yeah.
But I guess before we move on, we'll talk more about NXT's show next week. We actually see the pay-per-view coming up. It's one of the rare weeks where we don't have a pay-per-view because NWA doesn't matter at this point. If you want to watch it, they're on 4:00 on Fight TV on Sunday. But we move on. But what's your thoughts about this 5-way? Do you like the idea of just sticking everyone in there with Karrion Kross and not actually having a finish to that match earlier?
I mean, I thought it was weak. Gargano's going to take the pin, right? You can keep Cole strong after losing. You keep O'Reilly strong. You keep Pete Dunne strong, and you have Gargano lose the match, and he could lose the next 18 matches. Mm-hmm. So I think that's probably where they go. I'm not excited about a 5-way match. There's too many people, too much going on. And if you're Karrion Kross and you're the champion, we got to see him out there wrestling. Cole carried them. Gargano carried them. Let's see you go out there. Balor carried them. Go out there and wrestle matches as the champion where it's just you in the main event, 30 minutes. Let's go. And, so, and I think the 5-way match could be just like a clusterfuck. So I don't know. I don't love it. Maybe Karrion Kross loses and he goes to the main roster. Shit, they need guys apparently. So, we'll see what happens, but I'm not particularly excited. I think this card will be fine, but I think I think the card will be good. Other than the card will be good. The main event, I think, is just too much.
I I agree, and I'm more than happy to see what they do, how they close out this card. And we'll talk more about the card next week. But Jay, how about you let people know how they could follow us and all the fine programs on the Life Group Podcast Network through Facebook?
Sure. So we are at Work to Shoot Pod. We're also on Twitter. We're at Work Shoot Pod. We're also on Instagram at Work Shoot Pod. The great Jackie Andy helps us monitor that.
All right, let's not get it too big of a head.
Listen, she doesn't. I mean, listen, you don't do it. I don't do it.
Sure.
So thanks to Jackie for that. We are Work to Shoot Wrestling Podcast. We're in iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio. Wherever you get your podcast, type in Work to Shoot Wrestling Podcast and listen. And we're a part of the great Russell Life Group. And our podcast streams on there live on Thursdays, generally is when we do one. So yeah, check us out. We're a part of the great Life Group series of podcasts. Monday, we've got Dong City with Henry and Vince, baseball podcast. Tuesday, we've got The Audible with Matt and Randy, a slow time in the NFL. Every day it's about where Aaron Rodgers is going. Thursday, you've got us, Work Shoot Wrestling Podcast. Friday, we've got The Step Back with Jacob and Leon. Doing a weekly podcast with what's going on in the playoffs is tough, but they're doing a great job. And then Sunday, you've got Total Bases with Felipe and Sean.
Absolutely, and all those shows are great. Whenever I get a chance, I try to listen to every single one, either live or catching up on the feed on like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So if you get a chance, listen to them. We wouldn't steer you wrong. But Jay, there is another podcast that we have been part of in the past. I can't remember what it's called though. Can you help me out with that?
You don't know Jackie. You don't know Jackie. Jackie Andy, Jackie Rachel, Jackie Corey.
Nope.
The comedy podcast for the ages. I was invited to be on this week, and then I said I wanted to be on, and then they changed the day on me, so I can't be on the podcast.
Absolutely.
So whatever they can do to keep me off this show, they're doing. But even though I'm not on, I know I'm a ratings draw. I'm like Sammy Callahan. I'm the draw.
Well, you're the human wheelbarrow.
He draws flies like I do, I guess. But listen to the show. Great podcast. Very funny. Check them out. You don't know Jackie.
Absolutely. And as we're on that topic, we will be recording tomorrow just came out last week, the Friends reunion on HBO Max. We'll get into that show, other shows of that time period, like Living Single, talking about
I'm living single in the 90s kind of world. That's a great show, by the way. That was a great show. Go ahead.
Also, in regards to most likely, we'll talk about the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air reunion, and maybe what other shows might be a good idea for a reunion. But Jay, because you're not going to be able to be on the show, would you like to give a couple of quick thoughts on your love for Friends?
Yeah, I mean, just real quick, right? So, I mean, it was a 90s show. I was, a teenager, whatever. And the show never did anything for me. I didn't think the show was particularly funny. I felt like they tried to make New York City part of like the character of the show, but you never really felt it. It was like all these pretty white people and these pretty young white people, skinny. It's like, are there real people on this show? Like everybody's like skinny, white, and like young. Can you give me a fat person? Could you give me a dark-skinned person? Like, and so I never liked the layout of the show, what I felt like the show was about. And I think if it was 2021, I think you'd see the show be different. Like New Girl, right? Like that's a great show. And they couldn't, it just, so anyway, it just wasn't funny enough. I didn't think it was funny enough. And my theory, and Corey and I talked about this before, is I think the reason why the show did so well is because it's the 90s. It's people wanted to be in New York City. People wanted to be young, good looking, and white. And like that's what the show was. So I think part of it was an extension psychologically to a certain extent on like what people wanted to be. And you saw that in these people. And that's not a problem. That's what shows are kind of supposed to be. That's why you mostly see like really good looking people on television, right? And movies. So I think it was kind of an extension of that. So I think it was interesting in that way. But I thought it was a pretty terrible show. That was not funny at all. And some shows people love. I'm like, I get it. I again, from the psychological standpoint, I get it with that show. But from is this show funny? I mean, come on. You gotta be kidding me.
Well, I believe we just got our tag for that week's episode. We'll be clipping that to the end, and you officially were on the episode.
There you go. There you go.
And for the most part, I agree with a lot of things you said. I watched the reunion. I thought it was fine. Thought the one with Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was much better. And I thought Living Single, I thought was a better version of the show that actually started a year earlier, which was successful. But you can say whatever you believe in regards to why one show lasted longer than the other. I mean, one was on Fox, one was on NBC. So at a time when Fox wasn't an actual network. So I mean, we spoke about in the past on You Don't Know Jackie about other shows that were on Fox that had a cult following or were never as big as what they could have been if they were on other channels.
New York Undercover.
That was on wasn't it on ABC? Or was that on Fox as well?
That was on Fox. Fox did this thing where they're like, we're gonna go all in on black people. We got Living Single, we got In Living Color, we got New York Undercover. We're gonna go all in on black people when no one else wants to hire us as actors. And like you saw that,
like Married with Children,
Martin. They really went in on like a lot. I mean, yeah, they had obviously had shows with white people. I'm saying they really went on like shows with African American people. I think it was like a very interesting time for TV in the 90s for sure. And I think Fox really deserves. I mean, now their shows are horrible. They have 18 million 911 shows, but they did some groundbreaking stuff back in the day. They really did.
Absolutely. And Jackie Andy gave it a single tear because she wishes you were going to be on the show because she is your biggest fan.
That's fair. Jackie's my girl.
Hey, I've known her longer and she still supports you, but whatever. But before we get out of here quickly, our last subject, June 7th, New Japan Pro Wrestling comes back with Dominion after canceling basically a month worth of shows, as we spoke about in the past, in regards to the pandemic, and only as like last week, 2% of their population was vaccinated. They deal with these things a lot differently. But the big thing in this card is, as we spoke about, Will Ospreay had to vacate the title. We were thinking about for a while what they might do. They're going back to Reliable with Okada, but Okada versus Shingo, June 7th for the vacated New Japan Pro Wrestling World title. You also got Cobb versus Ibushi, so you got a nice 1-2 punch there. What's your interest level with it not being Will Ospreay, the title anymore? I know you being a huge fan of his.
Yeah.
Are you interested in opinion?
Well, first of all, I'm very worried about Ospreay and his career.
Yeah.
So I think that's the most important thing because, he was going to be a superstar and he was quickly ascending. And so that's really, really a bummer with the neck or the back, whatever. Like it could be bad. This isn't a torn ACL. Once you start dealing with people's necks, like you don't get your neck back. Like, so I don't know. I just really hope for the best for that guy because he's so fucking good, so fun to watch. One of the best 5 wrestlers in the world. I don't think that's a conversation. As far as the show, yeah. Also, by the way, and I also want to say this too. I know I'm throwing on a lot of editorials here before we get to the show, and I'm going to say this, and I say this a lot. I want everyone to watch New Japan Strong this week if you can. If you're a fan of New Japan and you listen to our show, watch New Japan Strong. This week was just spectacular. A really, really great hour of wrestling. As far as I'm interested for sure, I definitely think Okada wins. I think they're going to go back to the All Reliable. I think, Shingo now has established himself as a guy who could challenge for a title. And they could come back to him, I think, and it won't be like ridiculous. And, we know New Japan takes time. Shingo could win the G1 and that's how he kind of gets back. So, but But I think at this point, New Japan's like, it's like WWE did in the 80s. Like, we got to give it back to Hogan. Like after, the Warrior fucked up, it's like, oh, we got to give it back to Hogan. So I think we're going to see Okada get the belt, in my opinion. But yeah, it should be. I mean, it's going to be a great match. It should be a good card, a good show.
I agree. I mean, when things like this happen, you go back to Oh Reliable. I think whoever loses this match will be the front runner for the G1 with Ibushi. Those will be your two favorites. And we'll mostly have our buddy Sean on the next couple of weeks to talk about a little update on what's going on there.
When is the G1?
I don't think we know yet. I don't know if it's been, I think initially the thing was supposed to be in September because of the Olympics, but with the Olympics, still not a sure thing and everything else, it may get pushed back again. I don't know 100% sure at this point.
Yeah. I think, because I think with these guys being released, I think they could have a freaking knockout G1. I really do.
Get there, yeah.
If they can get there and they can, I don't know what's happening with vaccines in Japan, and that's why I said very lucky in our country to be able to get them. But man, they could have a great G1.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like I said, just not shortchange it. I think Kota Ibushi versus Jeff Cobb will be really good, and I think Yo versus El Desperado will be very good. So I think on this card, there's some really good matches, and who knows if this show will actually happen. There's always a chance we could have more restrictions in Japan. They have to cancel this, but for as of right now, it's June 7th. So I think it will be an interesting show. And of course, before I give Jay the last word, I said it kiddingly before, but if you're dying to watch wrestling this weekend, Sunday at 4 o'clock on Fight TV, I don't know how much it is, but you can spend your hard-earned money on a show that nobody truly cares about and see Nick Aldis versus Trevor Murdoch and one of the best female wrestlers in the world, and Serena Deebs versus Camille for the NWA Women's title. So I mean,
also Kylie Rae's coming back on that show. She's wrestling in a tag match. I mean, I have not watched. I'm not paying. But is NWA in trouble? I mean, they might be in trouble. And we could say out of sight, out of mind. Maybe they're doing fine, making their couple bucks. But Corey, when they were at their height
on YouTube, right?
On YouTube, we were talking about it, but it wasn't just us on Twitter. You would go to Twitter at 6 o'clock Eastern time, and it was blowing up with NWA.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't happen anymore.
Yep. I mean, Billy Corgan was on a Busted Open radio this morning, and he said that, since going to Fight TV, and of course it's the company line, said, he's had more meetings than he's ever had before. It's basically like the MLW Court Barrow way of speaking that, business is happening and business is booming, So who knows? I mean, on there, he said, he think that, Braun Strowman would be a good fit. I don't think they have enough money to pay Braun Strowman, getting back to the initial thing. But, hey, I mean, if you want to watch a show, like I said, you go to fighttv.tv, fighttv.tv, I believe it is, and look to see how much it is. And if you're bored on a Sunday at 4 o'clock, you're not a big NBA or a hockey fan, maybe you want to check it out and write a review on, Wrestling Life, and we'll let you know what people thought. But Jason, unless there's something else that's on the tip of your tongue, I think it's time for you to go and close out the show as you always did.
I think we're done here. See ya.